Hi, this is Sally Reid, and I am going to be answering a question today. And the question I got is, and this is very interesting where I got it. I got it from a construction worker and a deli counter guy in the Kroger in West Nashville. I live in Nashville. And they were casually wondering what happens to you after you die. So I'm going to answer. And I'm going to answer it based on my own personal experience with two near-death experiences, not just one, but two. And I'm not going to recount the near-death experiences. I'm just going to explain how the part of you that makes you leaves your physical body. So, what happens when your physical body no longer can support that piece of you that makes you you? And you know what I mean. When people are muted by drugs or by alcohol, they're not exactly who they are. They've got this filter of not who they are. There's a certain essence that makes every person precisely who they are. And it's a mixture of information that comes in and then information that they started with, the person that they actually are. So in my particular case, the first near-death experience, I was a very young child. So it was a very clean experience. And essentially what it felt like was going through a tunnel or sort of a dark space just for a moment. And that must have been the actual death. And then suddenly, poof, you're above your body looking down. And that happened to me twice. So I'm thinking that happens all the time. So you're above the body looking down. And I did notice my father, when he was passing away, he was up in the corner there because I can see souls and spirits. He was up in the corner looking down before his body left. So I'm thinking that's something that happens. So the piece of you, the things that many people call your soul, your essence, that the spirit that is you leaves your body and it floats above your body in this third dimensional plane for a while. And then you have choices. And this is where it gets complicated. You know about the different realms, the different dimensions. First dimension is zero, is flat. Second dimension is like a piece of paper. Third dimension is where we are. Fourth dimension is that space in between the place where all that is and this physical world. And that's where the spirits hang out. That's where many people who are mediums can visually see spirits. And that's where, when people talk about ghosts, that's the realm in which they live. They can live in many layers. They can live in the layer that I like the least. That's the ones where they're cognizant of the third dimension. That one scares me a bit. And I wouldn't say scare. It's just I don't like the idea that people can watch me that aren't in physical. I want them to be here where I can deal with them. Then there is the dimension where they're so stuck in themselves that they continue on. And these are the ghosts, excuse me, that are famous, that walk through hotels. The little girl that walks through the place in downtown Nashville. That's the fourth dimension where people are just sort of held. Then there is this other dimension where, and this is where the mediums can get in touch with people. It's where they're in the actual fifth dimension, and it goes on up. They're in the actual fifth dimension, but they have access to the fourth, so therefore they can communicate on the third. And I hope that it makes sense. That's where people, they talk about the poltergeists. They talk about weird things happening. Lately, it's been my garage doors. Somebody keeps freaking open my garage doors. I don't know what's up with that, but they do. It's happened 3 times in the last day. And we live way out in the country, so it's nobody else's garage door opener. I thought of that one. All right. So anyway, where was I? So that's the choice. Now, when it comes to the choice and what I talk about as a choice and how I notice it's a choice is because in my second near-death experience, well, actually both of them, you go to the place where the gathering place. A lot of people talk about the gathering place, where you meet your relatives, or it kind of looked like a golden room. The first time, the second time, I never even went there. But it's this moment of I can choose to stay or I can choose to go. Sometimes there's not an option to come back, but sometimes, for me, twice there was. So in my first near-death experience, I had no choice. I was told I had to go back. At the time, I was just under 3 years old, so I think it would have devastated my mother if I hadn't come back, right? And the second time, I had children that were young, and I did have a choice. I was told that I must fulfill my purpose, which is kind of what I'm doing now, of healing the people and telling the truth. And this is part of truth telling. I must fulfill my purpose, and then I come back. But if you choose to move forward, and this is what I'm being told by my guides, there is this, quote unquote, there's two moments of choosing. The moment of choosing to leave the third dimension and the moment of choosing to come back to the third dimension. And that's when people are talking about soul contracts and that type of thing. This is not, I'm not going to get into soul contracts, but yes, there are a lot of them, and people talk about that. What I am saying, just in the nuts and bolts of my personal experience, is that if you choose to stay, there are several things that happen next. The first thing that happens is you get an understanding. Is sort of, Albert Brooks talked about it in Review Your Life, or that movie, or whatever it was, where you go over your life. It's not that big. You don't actually do that, but you actually do that. It's where you get an understanding of what you learned, what you understand on Earth. And that happens. It can happen for a very long time. It can happen for a very short time, depending on the soul, on the person's proclivities. Because each person is exactly who they are when they're alive and when they're no longer with a physical body. You are who you are, always who you are. You don't change. In fact, I remember there was a man who was a detective who actually tracked himself down in his previous lifetime. So it is possible. I have tracked myself down. I found myself on a Civil War roster because I had some very vivid memories and dreams, and I actually found myself. But that's beside my point. What I'm saying is that you have a choice to review your life, and then that's when you decide what you want to do next. That's where the soul contract comes in, where you decide what you'd like to learn, what you'd like to not learn, blah, 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 blah. It's not as cut and dried as it sounds. It's very nebulous. It's more what we would call dreamlike. But it can happen over hundreds of years or a very short time, because there is no time on the other side. It's all now. I love that. So that's what happens after you pass away. Your spirit, the thing that makes you you, leaves your physical body, has a choice to stay in the fourth dimension, or it has a choice to move to the fifth. And from the fifth, you can move in the upper dimensions. There are a total of 8. And then the 9th one belongs to all that is. So how this works out with physics, because it does, it's beyond my ability to cope, but it's actually being described well in the realm of quantum physics, this particular realm of realities. And they stack, they layer. String theory explains it very well. So I hope this helps. And thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you.